Late afternoons in Savannah often carried a quiet melancholy, as if the city itself grew weary after a long day. Spanish moss hung low from ancient oak trees lining the damp cobblestone streets, and purple bougainvillea swayed gently in the breeze. On the tin roof of a small bakery named Sweet Magnolia, the rain tapped a soft, rhythmic lullaby, like a gentle reminder that something was coming to an end. Emma Reyes, 25, stood behind the counter, her flour-dusted hands frozen in place, eyes resting on the fogged-up window pane. It was hard to believe that this space, this kitchen, this scent of vanilla and cinnamon would soon cease to exist. Her mother's bakery had endured for nearly 20 years, but today marked the end of its struggle for survival. In her hand was a loan rejection letter. The third and the final. Below the sterile corporate signature lay a sentence, as brutal as a verdict. The building had been sold to a real estate developer. A boutique hotel would rise from its bones, and she, the daughter who gave up college, parties, and dreams to preserve her mother's legacy, would have no place left to belong. From the oven came the scent of what might be her last batch of cinnamon rolls. The familiar sweetness no longer comforted her. It stung, like a farewell whispered in sugar and spice. Outside, Savannah was drowning quietly in the rain, and inside, a heart was clinging to the last fragile threads of memory, unwilling to let go. The wooden door creaked softly as the wind chimes above it sang their usual song, pulling Emma out of her heavy thoughts. She looked up, and for a moment, the entire room seemed to pause. A man stepped inside, tall, broad-shouldered, his dark brown hair damp from the rain, and his black overcoat tailored so perfectly it might have been sewn onto him. He stood just past the threshold, his storm-green eyes scanning the room before they settled on her. Nathan Cole, the name printed across the sale documents. CEO of Cole and Easton Developments, the man the press hailed as the savior of forgotten towns. Emma didn't bother hiding the chill in her tone. "You here to see how fast I'm packing up?" Nathan removed his wet gloves, walked calmly to the counter, and replied, "I came to try the cinnamon rolls." She blinked. "Excuse me? What? You didn't know? Folks around here say they're the best in all of Savannah." His eyes held hers, not mocking, but focused in a way that made her feel oddly exposed. On the tray, 3 cinnamon rolls still sat warm. She had no plans to sell them, but something about letting even him walk out without tasting them felt wrong. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was habit. $35, she said flatly. He pulled out a crisp 100 and placed it on the counter. "Keep the change." Nathan took one bite and then slowly closed his eyes. For a fleeting moment, the polished businessman in front of her vanished, replaced by something softer, almost boyish. Emma didn't know why it struck her, but the sight tugged at something deep inside her chest. It had been 3 days, and Emma still couldn't forget the look on his face, that fleeting vulnerability when he took that first bite of her mother's cinnamon roll. That morning, the rain had finally stopped, but her heart remained clouded. She was wiping down the wooden counter when the familiar chime of the door echoed again. It was him. Nathan Cole, this time in a crisp white shirt, no coat. He held a leather folder in one hand and wore that same calm expression that unsettled her more than she cared to admit. "Good morning," he said softly. "I'd like to talk. If you have a moment." Emma crossed her arms, leaning slightly against the pastry display. "I'm busy closing down, Mr. Cole." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he placed the folder gently on the counter, as if laying down something fragile. "I don't want this bakery to disappear," he said. "Instead, I'd like to offer you the position of head pastry chef at the boutique hotel we're building here. I want to preserve this flavor and let it live on in a new form." Emma froze. "You'd have full creative control," he continued. "You can use your family recipes, name the menu, earn a competitive salary, full benefits, and if you're interested, I'm also planning a traditional baking workshop under your name." A part of her wanted to laugh, He had taken her place, and now he was offering her a job in her own kitchen. So, I wouldn't own my mother's bakery anymore. I'd just be an employee in what used to be mine. No, Nathan said, holding her gaze. You'd be the soul that keeps it alive. That sentence, and the look in his eyes, firm yet unexpectedly tender, left her unsure whether to be angry or tempted to believe. 3 days had passed since that strange encounter, and Emma Reyes still couldn't stop thinking about the words Nathan Cole had said. She stood in the small kitchen of her bakery, kneading dough mechanically. Everything was covered in a thin layer of white flour, and the silence in the room felt almost heartbreaking. Dough clung to her fingers, the faint scent of cinnamon lingered in the air, but her mind was tangled like a frayed spool of thread. I don't want this bakery to close, Miss Reyes. I want to invite you to be the head pastry chef for the new boutique hotel here. That sentence echoed in her mind like a recording stuck on repeat. There was no denying it. The offer was more than tempting. A high salary, full benefits, the chance to keep baking every day, to hold on to some part of her mother's legacy. But it came with a cost. She wouldn't be the owner anymore. She wouldn't be the one making the decisions. You'd be crazy to turn this down, Chloe had said when Emma told her about it. Her best friend was always the practical one, someone who understood the value of an opportunity in an economy that wasn't built for dreamers. It's not just about the job, Emma. He couldn't take his eyes off you. Don't pretend you didn't notice. Emma let out a short laugh. Come on. He's a businessman, Chloe. I'm a baker who lives in a tiny apartment and wears the same old apron every day. Guys like him don't go for women like me. Maybe this time you should let yourself be someone worth going for. Before Emma could reply, the doorbell chimed. Her heart thudded in her chest for no good reason, and when the door opened, there he was again, Nathan Cole. He wore a navy gray suit, his dark hair neatly combed, eyes the color of a winter sea. In one hand he held a folder and a quiet, polite smile. Good morning, Miss Reyes, he said, his warm voice filling the quiet space. Chloe glanced at Emma and quickly slipped into the back kitchen, not without giving her friend a playful nudge and a mischievous smirk. Good morning, Mr. Cole, Emma replied, gripping her apron slightly to steady herself. Back for more cinnamon rolls? I think I might be addicted, he joked, placing the folder on the counter. But today, I'm here for another reason. He slid the folder toward her. This is the revised contract. It includes everything we discussed and a few changes I think you'll find more comfortable. Emma glanced through the pages. There were new details, more flexible terms, improved working conditions, and most notably, a small line at the bottom, creative freedom, personalized pastry section, panaderia, Emma. She looked up, meeting his gaze. I'm still not sure I'll say yes. Nathan nodded. I'm not asking you to decide right away, but I do have a request. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. Let me show you that I'm serious, not just about the project, but about what it could become. And how exactly do you plan to do that? There's a fundraising gala this Friday night. It'll be held at the hotel. The attendees will be partners, investors, and people connected to the project. I'd like you to come, not as an employee, but as a collaborator. Emma blinked. A fancy party? Someone like her? I don't have anything to wear to a place like that. Nathan smiled, leaning in slightly. There's a boutique on the ground floor of the hotel. Talented Mexican designers. Go pick out anything you like. Think of it as part of the negotiation. Then he gently lifted her hand, raising it as if it were the most natural thing in the world, and pressed a soft kiss to the back of it. Emma stood frozen, her heart thundering in her chest. Give me a chance, just one night, he said softly. I think you'll see things differently. The emerald green dress Emma Reyes finally chose, after nearly 2 hours of hesitation at the hotel boutique, hugged her figure with such grace and softness that she barely recognized herself in the full-length mirror of her tiny apartment. Her light brown hair had been skillfully pinned into a low chignon by Chloe Turner, with a few loose curls framing her face. A touch of soft makeup highlighted her green eyes, now brighter, deeper, carrying the weight of an untold story. If Nathan Cole doesn't drop to one knee tonight, I'm officially declaring that men have lost all sense of beauty, Chloe said half-jokingly as she adjusted the dress strap on Emma's shoulder. You look stunning, Emma. If your mom could see you now, I swear she'd be crying proud tears. The mention of her mother tightened something in Emma's chest. Would she have supported her daughter getting involved in a high-stakes project like this with a man from an entirely different world? I'm only going for business, Emma said quietly, though even she didn't believe the detached tone in her voice. Chloe raised an eyebrow, handing her a dainty clutch purse. Right, and I'm the Queen of England, face it. You're trembling. The doorbell rang. Emma's heart skipped a beat. Nathan had said he'd send a driver, but she never imagined he would come himself. She stepped to the window and gently pulled back the curtain. Oh my God, Chloe breathed. If that's the driver, luxury car companies are clearly hiring runway models now. There he stood, Nathan Cole, impeccably dressed in a tailored black suit and crisp white shirt, the streetlight casting soft shadows on his sharply defined face. One arm rested casually on the sleek black car door, his sea-mule eyes shimmering like a galaxy in the night. Emma walked down the stairs on shaky legs, silently thanking herself for practicing in heels all afternoon. When she opened the door, Nathan's eyes drifted over her with a gaze that felt like a slow, deliberate caress. Emma, he murmured, his voice slightly hoarse. You look breathtaking. She blushed, looking down. I'm not sure this dress was the right choice. Nathan stepped forward, gently took her hand and spun her in a slow turn. Perfect. This color makes your eyes even more radiant. They entered the car together. On the way to the hotel, they sat in a comfortable silence. Only soft music played from the speakers, and the city lights flowed quietly past the windows. As the car pulled up to the entrance, lined with elegant vehicles arriving one after another, Nathan placed his hand gently over hers. You're going to be just fine. Just be yourself. That honesty of yours, it's what I admire most. Emma nodded slightly. They stepped into the main hall, where the soft glow of hundreds of candles and crystal chandeliers merged with the graceful sound of strings. Almost instantly, all eyes turned to them. Nathan Cole, an icon of power, was not accompanied by a fellow executive or a fashion model, but by a woman no one recognized. A woman of quiet strength and unassuming beauty who stood beside him with calm pride. A woman who, for a few seconds, made the entire gala pause. And then she appeared. A striking woman in a crimson dress that hugged every curve. Jet black hair cascaded down her back, and her eyes gleamed with something sharp. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Sabrina, Nathan nodded. Didn't expect to see you here. Neither did I, she replied, then turned to Emma. And you are? Emma Reyes, she answered calmly. I'm heading the pastry concept for the hotel. Oh, Sabrina smiled slyly. Another talent Nathan's discovered. He does have a gift for finding the right people for the right projects. Her words floated like silk, but cut like glass. Emma's spine stiffened. Something in the room shifted. After Sabrina walked away, Emma asked bluntly, who was she? An ex, Nathan replied with a small sigh. We used to work together. It didn't end well. Emma studied his face, her mind now swimming with questions. If Nathan had used this same approach with other women, how could she trust anything he said? On the drive home, sitting beside him in silence, Emma finally asked, Did you ever tell her about your grandmother's bakery in New Orleans? Nathan hesitated. The flicker of pause across his face was brief, but enough to plant a seed of doubt in her heart. And suddenly, the warmth she'd begun to feel, the laughter, the music, his hand over hers, curdled into something uncertain. It wasn't anger that followed, it was fear. That maybe, just maybe, she had fallen too fast into a story that wasn't hers to keep. 3 days had passed since the gala. Emma hadn't responded to any of Nathan's texts or calls. Not out of anger, but because she needed space to separate feeling from reason. Her mother's recipe book lay open on the kitchen table, pages stained with butter and a faint scent of cinnamon. But today, those familiar lines no longer offered comfort. Her heart was heavy with just one question. Did he ever truly understand what it means to lose a bakery like I have? Without another thought, Emma slipped the book into her bag, called a car, and set off for New Orleans. The house stood on a quiet street with red brick walls and a white picket fence. Yellow chrysanthemums bloomed on the porch, and a small brass wind chime danced gently in the humid breeze. Just as she raised her hand to knock, the door opened. Nathan? No suit, no executive edge, just a man in a faded shirt, his face worn from sleepless nights. You came, he whispered, like he wasn't sure it was real. I need the truth. In the kitchen, he poured 2 cups of coffee and set them on a well-worn wooden table. Then he pulled out an old photograph. A boy with messy brown hair kneading dough beside an older woman whose eyes looked exactly like his. This is my grandmother, Ethel's Hearth. Her bakery ran here for over 50 years. They tried everything to push her out. When she died, I promised I'd never let that happen again. Every project since, I've tried to protect what's real. Emma looked at him, not with suspicion now, but with something deeper. There was no CEO in his eyes, only a grandson who had once watched someone he loved lose everything. And me? She asked softly. What am I in all of this? Nathan stepped forward, lowering himself onto one knee in front of her. Not with pride, not with charm, but with sincerity and vulnerability. At first, maybe I thought you reminded me of someone, he began softly. But then, when you stood up and faced the world, when you baked that last cinnamon roll like hope still mattered, I knew you weren't like anyone else. You were yourself. You are the one I don't just want to help. I want to walk beside. Tears slipped quietly down Emma Reyes's cheeks. I was scared, Nathan, she whispered. Scared that I was just another role in your story. I understand, but I don't need a role, he said gently. I need someone who puts her whole heart into every pastry she makes. Someone who sees the value in the small, honest things. He reached out, brushing her cheek softly with his fingertips. And if you'll let me, I want you to be the one who stays. Emma looked at him, surrounded by the old kitchen, by the scent of flour and wood, by the memory of a woman long gone and the promise of a man who had changed. I don't know what the future holds, she said, her voice trembling. Neither do I, Nathan smiled, but I know where we can begin. She nodded, taking his hand in hers. After that night in New Orleans, Emma didn't give an answer. Not right away. They spent a few quiet days together in Ethel's old house, baking, revisiting forgotten recipes, and letting the past speak. No promises were made, no plans rushed, just honesty and silence shared between 2 people who had both lost something once dear. When Emma returned to Savannah, she didn't bring a decision. She brought something far more powerful: trust. 3 months later, the Magnolia Academy opened its doors. 1 year on, the building that once held Sweet Magnolia now housed a warm culinary haven where Emma taught classes, her spirit filling the space like cinnamon in the air. She was no longer the girl behind the counter, exhausted and afraid. She had become a guide for women stepping out of their own small kitchens and into possibility. In class, Emma leaned over to adjust the cuff of an older student. A good dough's like a good heart, soft when it needs to be, she smiled. The bell above the door chimed gently. Nathan stepped in, still in a tailored suit, but with eyes no longer focused on the next deal. Now, they only searched for one thing: her. Their gaze met as naturally as breath. When class wraps up, there's something I want to show you, he said quietly. After the class, he led her out to the back porch. In his hand, a small velvet box, the color of midnight sky. I never thought I'd love again, he began, voice low, but you came like soft rain after a long drought. He opened the box, a simple ring, set with a deep blue sapphire, steadfast and true. "Emma Reyes," he said, eyes shining in the late afternoon light, "will you marry me?" Among the scent of cinnamon, golden sunlight, and memories made whole again, she whispered. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." That night, when everything had quieted down, Emma Reyes stood on the rooftop, hands wrapped around a mug of hot cocoa. Nathan Cole approached from behind and gently draped a coat over her shoulders. "I've been thinking," he whispered, "how long it took for us to find each other." "Maybe not that long," she smiled softly. "Maybe we just had to get lost first, to recognize where home truly is." Nathan bowed his head and pressed a kiss to her forehead. "I've never been this sure of anything," he murmured. "I want to spend the rest of my life learning how to bake, teaching with you, and if you'll let me, building a real home together." Emma looked up at him. There were no flowers, no ring, just one sincere question, and two hearts beating in harmony. "Then shall we rise a shared dream together?" she whispered, eyes glistening. Nathan smiled. "My home is your home." And they both laughed, beneath a sky full of stars with the lingering scent of cinnamon from the evening's baking class, surrounded by two hearts once broken, now finding peace in the warmth of a new love.